let me tell you in a shorthand version a story that we told in a longer version today on radio. And let me introduce you to a man and a wife that I think will inspire you. We all have choices to live or die. And we all have choices on what are you going to do about it. Are you going to sit around and whine about it? Or are you going to make the best out of it? This story, I can't even lift it. Sam, will you help me lift it? This story starts with this pack. And it is brittle and extraordinarily heavy. How much does this weigh?
It's probably about 40 pounds.
If it's heavier than that, I'm weak. This story starts with this, and it is brittle because it is burned. I want to introduce you to the owner of this pack, and he'll tell you the story of how this body armor got into this shape. He is Sam Brown, and he is running for state rep in Texas. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing good, thank you, Glenn.
Tell me the story about how you.
This started shortly after I graduated West Point in 2006. 2 years later, I found myself in Kandahar, Afghanistan, literally in the middle of the desert. And as you know, the Taliban isn't a real fan of us being there. Mm-hmm. But we're there not necessarily for Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. At the base of it, we're there for our brothers. And I had a classmate from West Point who got caught in an ambush, and he needed support. And so I moved out to support him and his platoon. In the midst of their ambush, my vehicle hit an IED, and I was instantly engulfed in flames.
You're sitting in the back, and the diesel fuel washes over you. So you're right. Coated in diesel fuel.
I'm soaked in diesel fuel. And the sensation of that blast was unmistakable. You don't see tragedy coming at all times in your life, but when it hit, there was no mistaking it.
So your face is on fire, your body's on fire, your hands are on fire. What does that feel like, besides hot?
It drove me to releasing my life. In that moment, right after that blast, I quickly assessed that I'm engulfed in flames. And the first thing I did was I threw my arms in the air and I screamed, "Jesus, save me." Now, mind you, at 24 years old, very physically fit, I'd gone through the academic challenges of West Point. I'd gone through the physical challenges of Ranger School. Here I am. I've accomplished a lot physically and academically for a young man. And I encountered something that I could not overcome. I couldn't save my own life, Glenn.
You tried to put yourself out?
I tried to put myself out.
You rolled over?
I rolled over.
You threw dirt on yourself?
Absolutely. And I could not save my own life. And so, looking back on it, I've realized that there's one distinct way of knowing a man is near death. And that is when you hear someone screaming for their God and their mother. And seemingly neither are near. Someone is about to depart this earth. And so I hit that point, and the last two thoughts that crossed my mind were, how long will it take for me to burn to death? And when I burn to death, what will the transition from this life to the next be like?
How long are you on fire?
I was probably on fire from 30 to 60 seconds.
And you're looking through the...
I can see nothing but flames.
Gosh.
That's all I can see. All I can hear is my own voice screaming.
Are you breathing it in? You
yes.
have to be breathing it in.
I was breathing it in. Breathing it in. And so in that moment of releasing my life, I've now given up. I hear my gunner's voice. He had made it out of the vehicle. He was burned as well, but he was not as badly burned as I was. And I hear his voice, and he says, "Sir, I've got you." And I knew in that moment that I was going to survive. And I knew in that moment I had survived for a reason. I couldn't tell you what that reason was, but I knew I had to do something in my life.
Last night, I am sitting with my family and my son-in-law, who is the greatest, and I didn't think this was possible, but somebody who married my daughter who was not religious, and I thought, okay, this is not, okay. But when I talked to him, I took him to Jerusalem before they got married, and he said, so tell me, this is where Jesus was, right? Now, he grew up in America.
Okay.
What did Jesus do exactly? He was raised not with a hatred, just zero. So he was an empty page.
Right.
Last night I'm sitting in the kitchen and we're reading scriptures together, and it's in Matthew, and he who loses his life saves his life. And I looked at Tim and I said, what do you think that means? And we talked about it for a while, and that is your moment. You gave up your life, you lost your life, and really you now have it.
I do, and it's. I was actually telling Pat this morning that moment was so critical for me, because up till that point in my life, from birth till September 4th of 2008, I would look back, whether it was true or not, I would look back and give myself credit for what I had accomplished. At that point, I gave up my will to live. And so every moment from that point forward, I can't take credit for. I'm on the Lord's time. And so my motto has become, the life I live is not my own.
Okay, before we get to your run in Texas, and I want to know why you're not going to turn into John McCain in the end, let me take everybody to the hospital. You wake up, you're in a coma, medically induced coma. You wake up and you're in San Antonio, Texas, one of the best burn units in the world, and you're there, and you meet a nurse.
Specifically, I meet the dietitian who runs the burn unit. And, frankly, Amy met me before I met her. I was a wreck with tubes down my throat and nose and everywhere else, unable to see or communicate. And Amy first met me in the ICU. I met her a few months later, and there was a connection there that neither one of us could have explained at the time. But it's become obvious that we were meant to share our lives together.
What was the connection, Amy?
I would say it was a spiritual connection. Sam, when I first saw him, he was literally in the ICU with a breathing tube down his throat and feeding tubes, totally unconscious. And I just felt...
Could you see his skin, or was he wrapped?
No, he was completely wrapped head to toe.
You could see his eyes if he would open his eyes, but
That's
he
correct.
hadn't?
That's
Okay.
correct. And I felt a connection with him. It's very difficult to
Even
explain.
when he was not aware?
That's
before
correct.
he was conscious?
Mm-hmm. And initially I thought it was just because he was a lieutenant. He was the first officer that I had seen come through the burn unit. And he was 24 years old. He was the first lieutenant. He was essentially me, except he was burned. Just a young Army officer who had been in combat and was burned and recovering from that.
So that's what you first thought it was?
Yes. And then later on it became very apparent that it was much more of a spiritual connection. And the Lord was leading me to him so that I could really understand more about a relationship with God and what that looked like.
At this point in time, Amy and I are both going through a spiritual transformation.
What was yours based in?
I was just very self-absorbed and not treating people appropriately, just only concerned about myself and very selfish with my time and how I was treating people.
And so then you come along.
So I come along, and we both brought something to our relationship. Amy brought unconditional love. At this point in my life, Glenn, I wasn't scared of what did the future look like in terms of my physical abilities to do something. I was concerned about my ability to connect with someone and be loved by someone because of the scars that I would bear for the rest of my life. And my greatest fear was that I would never have someone that loved me, marry me, and allow me to build a family. And Amy was that for me. And I had the opportunity of sharing the love I felt God had in my life with her. And so we both brought those things to the table.
Okay.